Hey guys, what's doing?
Hello.
It's lovely to see everyone. Look at that. And we got some more people popping in. My hair's kind of a mess. Just to make sure nobody asked that question. Like, what's with your hair? We'll move on from that. You got to ask Chris that question. It's a slightly different version. With Chris, it's, where'd your hair go? Where is that? I love you. All righty. So, how can I help today? Welcome to another sparkling edition of Ask Rick Almost Anything. What do you have? We have dying, burning questions that can change your world.
So I'll go.
Okay, Chris.
So I'm struggling with coming up with a team name. I guess my question is creativity and advice on that. And if you were going to start a team today in like this day and age, how would that look like to you?
Yeah, so it's a great question. And, knowing that the world is in the state of flux, at least our world in the state of Connecticut is in a big state of flux with what's allowed and what's not allowed and all that good stuff, it becomes more and more challenging. When I did start my team back in 2002, Debbie and I made a very purposeful decision about removing our names, right? Because we wanted it to be an entity. And the reason we wanted it to be an entity that didn't necessarily have our names in it is because we didn't want to have the responsibility of building a business around ourselves. We wanted to just build a business so that we could step out of it and not have it make much of a difference.
And that is, I should have prefaced, that's how I'm 100% going into it. Like, I do not want it to be focused around my name team.
Yeah.
And I also don't want to limit it to like CT or 203 because I want to expand.
Yeah.
So it's a total mental roadblock for me right now. I just want to pass the responsibility off to someone else to start thinking of ideas and names and just get over it and move forward.
Well, so with what's coming down from the state in Connecticut, that any team names have to be compliant with using your actual name, right? And if not, simply connecting it with the brokerage. And so based on what you just said, expansion is probably the key to answering that question, because I'm not sure that, well, that's not true. I was going to say most of the bigger expansion teams out there, the bigger expansionists, have some other name that they use, but that's not 1,000% true. Kristen Cole is the Kristen Cole Network. Unfortunately, you couldn't use the Kristen Cole, the Chris DiBiase Network in Connecticut, right? Because of the rules, and you might have some struggles in New Jersey and New York as well. I think Massachusetts has some similar laws, right? So what I would say to you is, if you like flip a coin, if you want your name in it, then just have it be the Chris DiBiase team, and then that's just what it'll be. It's kind of, to me, it's like naming one of your kids, right? You can torture yourself about what you want to name your child, but then the child is born and you give him or her a name, and then that's just their name. Like, that's who they are then. So even if the name doesn't match, well, they grow into the name because that's just who they are. I think you'll find the same thing with naming your team. From an expansion perspective, being as simple and as clean as possible is probably not a bad idea. And so from an expansion perspective, I might personally choose to not use my name, because I think that people are more willing and able to connect and do business underneath an umbrella if it's not somebody else's name. I think there are some people who kind of feel like, all right, well, now I'm just competing with that other name, right? So I'm trying to build my own deal here, but I'm competing with that name. So what does that mean? It means, well, why don't you do something related to your art? Why don't you just have some cool name related to the other? I mean, show everybody your sold sign, right? Just turn your camera, right? That's all splashes of color and cool stuff, right? It's
Yeah,
what you do.
it's definitely a possibility. I don't know. The creative juices are not working in regards to this.
Well, don't make it creative. Don't make it hard. I mean, maybe it's, you know, I don't know. I'm happy to think about it when I'm running tomorrow morning. That's when I do my best thinking. So
Thanks, Rick.
yeah, but I think keep it simple. Don't make it a torture. And if expansion is in your future, for me personally, I think I might lose your actual name and go with something more generic, just knowing that you'd have to tag on the at Keller Williams Realty when you're doing business in the state of Connecticut.
Yeah, and that's no problem at all. And I think that's the route I want to go. And not just that, like team members, I want them to feel like it's not me. I want culture and camaraderie. So it's also that aspect.
Yeah, agreed. If anybody thinks of a really great name for Chris by the end of our time today, make sure you put it in the chat box or text it to him. And I will think about it tomorrow.
Thank you.
Sure. So I think Ronnie, you were next, and then Carolyn raised her hand. So we'll go Ronnie, then Carolyn.
Yeah, I had a question. If you have this expired listing, and I know there's like an agreement of compensation or whatever, but if expired listing and the owner does allow the the original listing agent to show the house to you, and I reach out to say, to try to get in writing that you're confirming that the buyer's agent and showing the home, if I bring a buyer to your home, that the compensation would still be because the thing is expired. It would still be what it said on the original listing, 2.5%. And I'm just curious what you do. I mean, I was trying to get it in an email. And of course, the listing is, oh, he's a nice guy. If it comes to it, when you make an offer, we can do that. But to me, that's already too late. Like, I want to just get a confirmation. Is there, I'm just saying, how would you handle it? You just say, I just need confirmation from, the owner that we're still, that, that this was the, what was discussed, or this is that we're confirmed on this.
Well, if the homeowner, if the homeowner is engaging the listing agent, right, either formally or informally, as the buyer's agent, I wouldn't go to the seller in that circumstance. I would just do a quick agreement of compensation with the listing brokerage. Oh
no, that's what I'm talking about. I wasn't it's kind of a little long story, but I wasn't going with the seller. At this point, I was dealing with the listing agent. But when I said, basically, just confirming and just wanted to have it kind of in writing in an email, the response was, oh, the owner's a really good guy. I'm sure he's good for it, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, I'm sure he's a nice guy too. But, and so then he said, you know what, I'll, if it comes to your client making an offer, I will basically, re-sign a listing agreement. But that to me is not cutting it, because you could re-sign it at that point, and he could say, well, I'm not going to do the buyer's agent at this percent anymore, or whatever it may be.
Yeah, no, so I agree 100% with you.
Okay.
For me, we have some kind of clarity around how we're getting paid and by whom and how much before a showing happens. And here's why. Because if you do this long enough, you recognize that the second you introduce a buyer and a seller, if there's no protection about anybody, how we're all going to get paid, it is absolutely possible that buyer and that seller can put something together and cut everybody out. Does it happen often? No. Is the seller a great guy? Sure. I learned something back in the 90s by watching the X-Files. Anybody ever watched the X-Files? right? And there are two things. The first one is the truth is out there. The second is trust no one.
Right. I did and I did make the mistake of I showed it, but now I want to go back and re-emphasize that I need. So, but what I'm saying is, would it be that the listing agent tells me that's what the thing is, or just have him email me something that he spoke with the seller and the seller is agreed? I'm just not too sure.
No, if the seller has engaged the listing agent and agent C again to represent them formally or informally, your agreement of compensation now needs to be with the listing brokerage. And for me, an email from the listing agent does not cut that. What that means is get me the details, the names of the buyers, the names of the sellers,
Right.
the property, the
Yeah,
whole to do.
The listing,
and
the
I'll-
listing agent is the owner, so like,
Oh,
is-
okay. Well, so yeah, that's another piece of
that's
information.
okay.
that
All
was
right. So
so-
I just need him to confirm, somebody to, basically him to confirm it, if he's the agent of the.
Well, if
he's
the listing
broker.
agent is the owner, but not the broker of the office, well, then there's the agreement of compensation is between brokerages. So the broker of their office and I will sign an agreement of compensation, which I am happy to write for you. You just need to get me all the details.
Okay, I'll maybe talk to you after this. Next question that you brought up, which is something that I wanted to ask as well. Do you think it's a good idea? Again, this listing agent basically saying, oh, you can speak to the seller if you want, blah, 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 to my buyer. I'm like, do you ever think that's a good idea? Do you think that's a good idea? Like that a buyer, that I feel like the agent's kind of cut out if the seller and the buyer, like you say, start talking, or is that okay? Or is that okay?
Well, so the answer is it depends. If everyone is fully represented and has all their little I's dotted and T's crossed,
Mhm.
and you get to an impasse where you can't make things work agent to agent, sometimes having the parties speak directly solves a problem. Just to do it to make something easier, or I mean, I'm not sure what the circumstances are, why the suggestion is let's have them speak.
I think there was some, yeah, I felt like the reason was the listing, and this again, whether it's in this case or not, I'm giving you, when the listing agent doesn't know the right answers or doesn't know the answers to the questions, they're almost like, I felt like the listing agent saying, oh, I don't really know, but if you want, you can speak to the seller. So like, like that's kind of what.
Well, you speaking, I mean, again, I think the answer lies in who's going to take control of the scenario,
Okay.
right? So as the buyer's agent, you
I agree.
may be able to turn around and say to the listing agent, you know what? No, I'm not going to speak to the seller. The seller's your client. So if you could go and speak to the seller and get me the answers to this, this, and this, I'll put them in an email. If you want to forward my email to the seller, if that's simpler for you to get these answers and then forward it back to me, that's great. But in scenarios where people get wishy-washy or people make dumb suggestions, it's just a matter of you then stepping up and stepping in and saying, no, you know what, here's how this is going to go down. Let's do it this way, this way, this way, with a smile on your face and from the
Of course.
position of being helpful and moving everyone forward. But it's someone in that scenario of people has to just say, this is how we're going to do it, and here's
Yeah.
why we're going to do it that way. So if
Mhm.
that has to be you, then it has to be you.
Yeah, and I just even asking on your feelings just in general. It's such an interesting thing, the whole relationship of seller and buyer. It is a business transaction. So I just wondered sometimes if in this business transaction, does that, when buyers and sellers talk, does that make it better? Or is there a reason for, we tell the sellers to leave the house? And I find maybe because it is a business transaction, it's not always so great to have those two parties.
The answer
conversing.
is it depends. There have been
Okay.
times in my career where it has helped.
Okay.
Again, because we weren't able to get the job done by keeping everybody apart. And so as a
Okay.
last ditch kind of thing, saying, hey, what if you all just talked and maybe kind of
Right.
see. So it all depends on the scenario. I think not having people talk is more the norm. And I would pedal down that path until or unless there's a scenario where you've kind of tried everything else, and then, putting people together can sometimes solve that issue.
Makes sense. Thanks.
Sure. Carolyn,
Hi there.
hello.
I have a quick question for you about being a broker.
Mhm.
Last year, I took my broker test. I passed. So I know you have to either get your license as a broker within 2 years of passing the test,
Mhm.
or else you would have to do it all over again. So I hit
Yeah,
the
you
1 year.
don't want to do that.
I don't want to do that. So I hit the 1 year mark, but I think my issue was in the beginning, I wanted to get, to have my LLC be the broker.
Mhm.
But I ran into other problems with that because I think 51% of it had to be owned by the broker, and 100% of it has to be real estate professionals. So the other 49% isn't a real estate professional. So that kind of got nixed, but I kind of was putting it off until I had to deal with it. But question is, does the broker have to be an LLC, or could just be like myself, that how I am as a salesperson? Can I just change it over to a broker?
So yes, you can. And the real answer is it depends. You'll find that most of my answers to most questions are it depends, right?
Mhm,
It's the attorney in me. But the answer is it depends on what you're looking to accomplish, right?
mhm.
If it's simply a matter of having the broker's license versus the salesperson's license, we probably have, I don't know, 40 or more brokers, maybe even 50 brokers out of the 600 real estate agents that we have.
Right.
Who hold a broker's license.
Okay.
It's so if it's just a matter of a different license, you can go ahead and get your broker's license. It doesn't change
That's
anything on the
okay.
on the inside. You're still affiliated with the brokerage.
Right.
I am
Mhm,
still the broker of record, even though you are a broker yourself. You're
mhm.
affiliated with a broker of record, so there's a level of responsibility that I still retain, even though you have a broker's license.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm,
and so none of that changes anything internally or externally.
mhm.
If you were attempting to get paid to an LLC, right, for potential tax purposes, right? And again, everybody on here would have to speak to their accountant to know whether or not there is a benefit or not.
Right.
Because a year or two ago, somebody said out loud, "Oh, well, with the new tax laws, everyone should become a broker," and that's simply not the case, right? In some instances, depending on you and your financial scenario in your household and
Mhm.
the way your business runs, your real estate business, it could be a benefit to be a broker and have us pay the LLC.
Right.
For most people,
Mhm.
it's six of one, half dozen of another, and so everyone was running out taking all these classes that really weren't terribly necessary.
Right.
Um, the way the real estate laws work in the state of Connecticut is that we can only pay a licensed entity. And
Mhm,
so what that means is if you were looking to have us pay to the LLC, you would
mhm.
have to then use your broker's license and license the LLC with a second broker's license. So now you have two broker's licenses. You have your personal one and the one you're using for the LLC. There's not a separate test. You just call the state and they expand your broker's license into two.
Okay.
You get to pay for two each year.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
but you use two. But you're 100% right. 51% of the LLC has to be owned by brokers, and 100% of the LLC has to be owned by licensees.
Yeah. So that's where we ran into a problem. So now I'm trying to think going next year for 2022 taxes. What is it better to get 1099 and just get paid personally and have a Schedule C, or have the LLC and go through the whole business tax for that
Yeah.
LLC and then pass it on to my personal taxes. So I was
Yeah,
just
and
that's
the real answer to that comes from your accountant based
yeah,
on yeah, because it also depends on how much you're actually earning in real estate, right? I know a couple of people who ran out and got their broker's licenses. They don't make enough for it to have really mattered. And so again, there's all this work now. The broker's license costs more each year, so your expenses go up.
Mhm.
Just to have that license, you have to do your CE earlier than everybody else, so you have
Right.
2 months less time. So it got silly because people heard it's a benefit without really exploring it. So I appreciate the question because it's a little more complicated than just go get the broker's license. However,
Right.
now that you've done the work,
Yeah,
minimally, you should just go ahead and switch it out so you don't lose that. Within the next year, switch it out so that you don't lose the work. Again, because if you don't, if that's all you do, there's no other changes. There's nothing, it's all
Right,
just
just, yeah.
invisible.
Okay, good. That's all I have to do then. I don't have to worry about getting an LLC, and I'm not gonna do that. I
Got
want to be my other one, but can't do that unless my husband becomes a
Yeah,
real
get him
estate.
licensed and then he could do it.
No, I know. We'll try. Thank you.
All right, sure thing. What else? Great questions.
Hey, Rick, I had a question regarding promoting properties that you're not the listing agent of. So, my understanding was that if you were to promote a property that wasn't yours, that had to be done through an IDX website. There was protocol in place in order to show other agents properties on your website. Where I'm kind of confused, or maybe it's just a gray area, is the use of social media. And I've seen a fair number of things, and I've honestly have done it myself, where you're at a property, you're showing it, and you're taking a couple pictures or a little video or something, and maybe it's not the full A through Z of the property, but it's some details about it and it's showing some photos. So I'm just wondering what, from a technical and legal perspective, what is acceptable, what is perhaps, I don't want to say not legal, but what is acceptable in a real world scenario. How essentially where I'm coming from is, I'm seeing properties that I'd love to kind of blast out there to people and say, hey, look at this, it's really cool, but I don't want to get in hot water at the same time.
Got it. Yeah, so I'll give you the good, the bad, and the ugly on this, right? Because there is kind of very black and white conversation we can have, and I guess there's a small amount of gray, but less so when it comes to this. And so first, let me ask the question: are the properties that you're talking about not being the listing agent for still part of the brokerage? Is the listing agency still our own agency, or are you talking about going outside of our agency?
I would be, I guess, in theory, talking about going outside our agency.
Okay, yeah, that's what it sounded like. Yeah, and so don't do that. There's the fast answer. Don't do that. Recognize that one's ability to promote, market, represent, discuss, or anything a property has everything to do with creating an agency relationship with the owner of said property. There's only one way to create an agency relationship with an owner, and that is to have a signed listing agreement. And so unless you are a co-listing brokerage, and notice I'm not talking about listing agents or buyer's agents, I'm talking about brokerages, right? I'm talking about agencies, because in the state of Connecticut, all contracts are written via the brokerage. So if you're showing a property that is listed by Coldwell Banker, and you think it's really awesome, and you want to post a couple of those pictures on social media to say, hey, I was at this property today, it's really awesome, don't. And if you've done that in the past, let's make that last time the last time. And here's the problem with that, right? The seller should have some control over who promotes and talks about their property. They've hired somebody at Coldwell Banker to do that. They didn't hire you, and they didn't hire anybody inside of our brokerage, right? And so you don't have the right to market, promote, advertise. You don't even really have the right to discuss all that much somebody else's property. When you put it out on social media, right? Now you run into issues where it's certainly possible that the general public, remember one of the licensing laws as well as code of ethics topics is painting a true and accurate picture to the general public and to the rest of the industry. If you're promoting somebody else's property, it could well be that the general public now thinks that you're the listing agent, and calls you instead of the listing agent because of some of the pictures that you posted. And that's where you start getting yourself into trouble, because either the general public, when they find out you're not the listing agent, kind of feels duped. And when the actual brokerage that represents the property finds out that you've posted pictures of their property without their permission or the seller's permission, with no real malice behind it, the only thing they can think of in terms of why you would do that is to attract buyers to yourself off of their property, right? So it just starts to get really, really messy, even if the intent is innocent. So it's a bad idea to do. If in fact you've seen other people do it, if they're part of our world, then shoot me those instances so I can address that more globally. If they're not a part of our world, I can't take responsibility. I have a hard enough time being responsible for 600 of you, so I can't take responsibility for what other people do, except if they're doing it with your listings. If somebody at Coldwell Banker now is posting pictures and discussing your listing online, then for me, I would need to address that with the other brokerage to say, yeah, no, please don't do that, because ultimately doesn't paint a true and accurate picture for the public or for our industry about who represents. And the lines of representation are very, very important in terms of who can say what and who should receive or give information on a particular property. Does that help?
Got it. Yeah, no, that definitely helps. Thank you. And I guess, sort of a side question to that is, I've been asked on my listings for permission to post photos of it before. Now, I should say I don't know if this was a registered brokerage or just an account that posts. This was like a lake specific, account. So they posted lake houses for sale. And at that point I thought, well, and they said, we'll give you credit and so forth and your info. So I thought, well, it's kind of like free advertising, so why not? I said, okay. So I guess
stop there a second, because in that scenario, and if it's your property with its photos and video or whatever else, and it says, property represented or offered by Ryan Kundrat at Keller Williams Realty with contact information for you and or the brokerage, well, then that's different, right? That's okay, because now it's clear that this is the property and this is who represents this property. It just happens to be being featured on somebody else's website. That's how IDX ultimately works, right? IDX is exactly that, with its credit given for the listing brokerage, but being showcased on somebody else's website. So if that's the case, then that's okay.
Rick, I did that in the past. Not to interrupt, because I did an ethics class with HGAR, and I had asked the same question because they were like, don't repost. And I was like, well, I see a lot of realtors that do this often, and I know that I've done it in the past, but what I did was I would post 2 or 3 pictures of a home that I actually really loved, whatever. But in the post, I would say, pictures and information courtesy of blah, blah, blah brokerage and listing agent, blah, blah, blah. And they were like, gray area. So it's probably fine because you're shouting them out. But they're like, if you're just posting a picture and taking credit for it yourself, then don't. And I was like, well, no, I wouldn't do that.
Yeah. Well, and to Matthew's point, the reason it's a gray area is because the listing brokerage did not give preemptive authorization. Even though they're getting credit for it, they didn't give preemptive authorization. Now, had Matthew said, you know what, I really like this house, I called Coldwell Banker and said, hey, you know what, I'm going to do this and I'll give you total credit, is that okay? And Coldwell Banker answered back in writing, because I like to have everything in writing, sure, you have permission to go ahead and advertise that property. Then I guess kind of go for it. I think there's still some exposure there, because we don't represent that property. And if you unwillingly said something that was incorrect about that property, that could come back at you, right? If you say, I like it, it's pretty, that's great, right? If anything else is said about the property that ends up being incorrect, that could come back to bite you and bite us. So again, that's why it's so gray. And then to follow up Ryan's question, if it's a property that is listed by our brokerage, well, then what you owe each other is a conversation, right? You just need to ask permission of each other, right? If I wanted to post something of Chris's, or Carolyn wanted to post something of Chris's, right? Just a phone call to say, hey, this is what I'd like to do. I love that property. Would you mind if I showcased it? You know, that's different when it's inside, because the brokerage represents all the sellers, right? So as long as you're talking with each other and getting the okay from each other, then I certainly don't have any issues with you guys doing that, right? Some of you as listing agents might have issues, and you have every right to make a decision as to whether or not you want to share your inventory or not. Does that kind of answer the larger question, Ryan?
Yeah, it does. I guess I don't want to ostracize the time here, but I see so much out there that it's often hard to know what's okay, what's not, what is sort of you know, you need to sort of decide. You know, for example, I've gotten emails that show a cool property, and they say we would represent the buyer in this transaction. So it's clearly not, and I get this regularly. And so it's clearly not their and I go on and look it up, and it's not their listing at all. And now whether or not there's some formal agreement to this other brokerage to do something, or a one-time off, you know, agreement, obviously I don't know that, but yeah, I'm just trying to understand sort of where that line or those lines are, you know, in this whole thing.
Yeah, the line is closer to your toes than you think is my thought, right? Because it's,
Yeah.
and I understand what you're saying. I know that there's stuff out there, especially from a social media perspective. People just think, well, you know, it's online, so therefore it's all free game. You just always have to remember that we live inside of a regulated industry, and our industry is regulated by the rules of agency, and there's only one way to create agency. And that is with a formal buyer's agreement or a formal listing agreement. So if you don't represent the seller, if we don't represent the seller, you need written permission in order to do anything with anybody else's inventory.
Got it.
Chris?
Yep. That makes sense.
So I have a question about geographic farming. Was that something you and Debbie did before when you were in production?
Yeah, it's something I did a lot as a solo agent. And then once Debbie and I merged our businesses together, we did keep a geographic farm going. Yes.
Okay. So what are the numbers I should look for in a farm? Like turnover rates, if there's a dominant agent, like a starting number of homes to start with, and how consistent to mail?
Yeah, so I'll answer some of the easy ones first. I would say minimally 200 homes. Mine was 400 as a solo agent, and then Debbie and I were doing probably double that once we merged our businesses together, maybe upwards of 1,000. But I say minimally 200 because 200 is the cutoff for bulk mail postage versus non-bulk mail, right? So that's just an economic thing. I think if you're starting a farm, between 200 and 400 is manageable. Because if all you're going to do is mail to it, I would say don't bother. If you're going to mail to it and then walk the farm and try and meet people, or call through the farm behind some of your stuff, then it's certainly worthwhile. And you know, to do 3,000, you're not going to make 3,000 phone calls. So keeping it realistic so that you can actually cultivate the farm personally, I think makes good sense. And I think that number is between 200 and 400. How often? If you read the MREA, Gary tells us it's once a month, right? That's the 12 Direct program. And so it's once a month. What should you be sending? My opinion is anything business related, right? It can be different, but it should be business related. I don't send recipes, you know, because unless you're a baker and you want people to call you at Christmas time for cake, right? Don't send things that send a different message about your pattern of success. I like the Chris did it again, Chris did it again, Chris did it again. You know, here's some stats, here's some tax info, here's some, you know, whatever. Make it business related, and you have better results. What other questions were there? What did I miss?
Is there a turnover rate you're looking for?
Yeah, so it's a great question. I was never that scientific about it. There are certainly companies you can hire and whatnot to really look at different neighborhoods where people haven't moved in a while, and so maybe statistically they'll pop up. For me, it was my first farm was based on um, busy roads, because I knew that most of the people where I was farming, thought a double yellow line was the death of their listing. And what I was trying to accomplish when I was new to the business was my name. I wanted my name out there. And so I thought, all right, well, if I take listings on busy roads, now more people are seeing my sign, so more people are seeing my name. My open houses are on a busy road, so I'm getting more eyeball traffic. So I went with the 3 busiest roads in the town of Ridgefield, plus that was about 200. And then the other 200 were just the neighborhood up north, because when I looked around, everybody seemed to be trying to attract sellers in the southern part of town and nobody in the northern part of town. So I just went where I thought there were fewer competitors. I have in the past attempted to unseat dominant agents in certain areas. I did something in Norwalk once. I sold my brother a house there a long time ago. And there was this dominant agent there. And I thought, well, you know what, who does she think she is? I'm just going to take over this neighborhood, and started to do farming to specifically unseat her. But it wasn't my main focus for my local farm. Does that answer that?
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hey,
Well,
Chris.
yes.
Go.
Hold on a second, because I think David was next, and then either Ryan or Ronnie. You guys can do rock, paper, scissors. Go ahead, David.
Hey, a quick question on continuing education. I thought the other day that somebody said in the 9 o'clock call that you have to take your code of ethics again if you weren't licensed in this year, because they changed the duration of how many times or how often you have to take it. Is that, did I remember it correctly or not?
So the code of ethics requirement is now once every, I believe it's once every 3
Right.
years. And so this current cycle does end in 3 weeks. And so if you've been licensed between January 1st, 2019 through today, your requirement should be covered, because the test you passed should have covered that. So it's not in the last year, it's in the last almost 3 years. If you've been licensed, you should have that check mark. And then for any of you who have been licensed longer than that, if you haven't taken a code of ethics class in the last almost 3 years. Well, Christine is telling me it might be 2 years now, because it used to be 4 years, and then I thought they changed it to 3 years. I'm going to have to verify that.
So who would you call, like your board, in order to find out where you are or confirm what you need?
Yes, you absolutely would call the board and tell them who you are, and say, I'm just checking in on my code of ethics requirement. Chances are, if you haven't heard from us, because the boards typically are running all these lists and then getting them to us, and then and either copying us on what they're saying to you guys, or we turn it around and let you guys know that we've received that from the board. So chances are, if you haven't received anything from us or the board, you're okay. But if you want to be certain, do double check with, call your board and ask that question.
Okay, cool. Thank you.
Right. For those of you who do need it, you can take it online. Okay, Christine is now confirming it is every 3 years. So this current one is January 1st, 2019 through the end of this month. And then the next 3-year block will continue. For those of you who don't need to take it before the end of the year, what I would do is on like January 3rd, take the code of ethics class, because then it counts, you get double credit. It counts for one of your electives for this current CE year for the state, but it also counts for your next 3-year period of code of ethics training for the for NAR. So you can double dip on that. Make sense? Excellent. And so I think Ryan and Ronnie both unmuted. So you guys fight it out.
Ryan can go.
Thanks, Ronnie. It was actually just a quick follow-up to Chris's question about the farming. You had mentioned that you were targeting northern areas because everyone was going after south. How did you actually determine that that's where your competition was targeting?
Yeah, so great question. And again, my answer is not going to be as scientific or as detailed as you may expect. What I did was I kind of went like this to see which way the wind was blowing, right? I asked people in my office what they were doing. I asked people out and about, other people in other brokerages what they were doing, and anybody who was doing anything in terms of consistent farming, which I have to tell you was not a ton, right? So if you all think that you're the only one not doing farming, you're incorrect about that, right? Because most people don't have a consistent farm setup. That's most real estate agents. So, which to me is why it's a powerful addition to your lead generation program, because it is something that can set you apart if you're creating consistency with 200 or 400 people. So it was really just more word of mouth. I also knew that what was happening in 20 years ago in the southern part of Ridgefield is where all the kind of, neighborhoods that everyone wanted to live in were. And up north, I mean, you would think North Ridgefield, you thought maybe you needed your passport to get there, because people would be like, oh, really? We have to, show me a property all the way in North Ridgefield, like it was Canada. And yet that's what it was like 20 years ago. And so I knew that the focus for any established real estate agents was going to be the South, because that was what I was hearing even from buyers. So my focus was just on the North because I knew it was up and coming and I knew I'd have less competition. Again, it wasn't terribly scientific. That's how I figured it out.
Great, thank you.
Sure. Ronnie.
Yeah, the question is, when people, when there's like a private listing, pocket listing or whatever you want to call it, where it's sold, without going on the MLS. When you look at closed listings on the MLS, that would not include that.
Yeah. So the answer to that is it depends, right?
Okay.
And the reason it depends is that there are some agents who do off-market transactions legitimately, where they have all the right paperwork to be off-market, and they don't ever put them on for statistical purposes. There are some agents who do put off-market sales on the MLS just for that reason, for statistical purposes. My understanding is that when you put things on for statistical purposes, they don't pull in your own numbers or your brokerage's numbers, so you don't really get credit for the sale, which is why a lot of people are like, well, you know what, if I'm not getting credit, what's the point of putting it on? It's not a bad idea to keep the MLS as chock full of relevant data as possible. It only helps all of us moving forward, right? So I don't think it's a bad idea to post for statistical purposes only, or whatever it's called nowadays, but not everybody does it. So the answer is it could include off-market sales, it could not. Okay. And likely the answer is it includes some and doesn't include others.
Okay, my next question from that is, I know, like, in Ridgefield, for instance, if you get the Ridgefield paper or whatever, you'll see like the homes that transferred hands. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I'm just theoretically thinking, like, so can you get that information? Like, it would be probably hard pressed to get the information. If somebody thinks that that's happening, like somebody thinks that's happening in the Lake area, would there be a way to say, hey, I went to New Fairfield and this is what what I asked, would they show me that and this links up last month with the MLS of what sold? You know what I'm saying, kind of?
I don't.
Okay, I guess what I'm saying is, if there's a conception that, oh, homes are being sold and they're not being sold through the normal channel of an MLS, isn't that public knowledge still? When a home changes hand, it's still public knowledge, right? So feasibly you can get the information, right? If homes were,
yeah, it's public record. I'm not sure. It's certainly public record. I mean, I'm not sure it's common public knowledge, because there's just fewer and fewer places that are publishing that data nowadays, right? But you could certainly go to to New Fairfield Town Hall and look at the transfers for the past month and see
Okay, okay.
what was. Again, I think it's an
I'm
enormous
not gonna do that,
project.
but
Yeah, right.
no, I'm not gonna do that.
think
I just was wondering, but I'm saying it is public record if somebody, for whatever reason, wanted to.
yes.
mean-
Well, I think I'm okay saying all transfers are public record.
Yeah. Okay.
I think I'm okay there. Ariana, am I okay saying all transfers are public record? She may be on
Okay.
a call or something,
Mhm.
but I'm pretty
There wa-
sure
there-
I'm okay
Mhm.
saying all. I
Mhm.
don't usually go with
Yeah,
all or never, but I think everything is public record. I'd be hard pressed to come up with an example of something that would be hidden from the municipality.
okay.
What else?
I actually have a question.
Yes, sir, Matthew.
So I spoke with somebody recently. They aren't in an incredible rush to sell their home, but she was like, "No, you seem great. I want to work with you. Blah blah blah. We're having coffee in the next couple weeks." But one thing she did ask is if I could somehow provide her with a letter, and I was like, "Well, I'm gonna have to talk to a lawyer about it," stating that her home isn't actually valued at what the town has now assessed it. So it's here in Greenwich, and Greenwich, I'm sure, as you know, they sent out letters with everybody's new assessment. And obviously it's quite high. And she's like, honestly, we've lived in our house for over 30 years. We've never updated it. In fact, Ida also kind of trashed the house. So it's really even worse. She's like, it's practically a tear down. We'd probably honestly rather sell it as a blank lot. But point being is, she doesn't want to pay the taxes on the new assessment. How do I help her out in that regard?
Yeah, so it's a great question, and the best advice I can give you to give her is to seek out attorneys who specialize in fighting tax assessments, right? And
Wow.
so because that's not really anything that we have the ability based on the license that we have to get
Sure.
our hands into.
Okay.
I will say now this example that Matthew gave may be the exception to the rule that I'm about to throw out there, or at least the caution I'm about to throw out there. During the course of practicing real estate in any given year, you hear a lot from sellers. I'm assessed way too high. I shouldn't be paying these kind of taxes. And in my experience, when I plumbed down a little bit for some more information, what I find is, well, the homeowner is upset that the revaluation team, right? Because what just happened in Greenwich happens in every town every five years now, I think, is the state of Connecticut, where they do a formal revaluation, and they hire a valuation company on the outside, and everybody gets letters that says, here's when we're going to be in your neighborhood, or we'd like to stop by and view the property and whatnot. And if you choose not to let people in, well, then they have to just guess, right? And so sometimes people guess, and they guess high, and it's because of decisions the homeowner actually made. And then the other thing I'll caution is sometimes homeowners say, I'm paying way too much in taxes, only to have somebody go and argue their case for them. And because I've seen it happen over and over again, and the assessor comes back and says, you know what, you're 100% right. Your assessment is wrong. It's way too low. And they raise the assessment, which is not what you want either. So you just have to kind of walk the line of the pros and the cons of fighting the assessment. And again, your scenario, Matthew, may be
Sure.
an exception to the rule that I'm talking about. But just to broaden the topic, remember that there are attorneys who specialize in that, so you can pass them to one of those. And if anybody needs people to do that, what I would do is send out a blast to the entire roster
Okay.
and see who you get back, because I'm certain some of your colleagues have used attorneys to get that done in the past in certain municipalities.
Okay. And it's just a real estate attorney, nothing special, or is it an accounting attorney? Like, is it a special one for this?
It certainly can be. I would have it be someone who who is local to the municipality, because they know kind of the ins and outs. They also know the people and the players who
Yeah.
have to be spoken to. They know when the last reval was, they know how it was done and who did it. So make it somebody local, and it doesn't have to be a real estate attorney or necessarily an accounting attorney. It's just someone who understands how tax assessments work. And I would look for someone who's done it successfully a bunch of times.
Okay, perfect. Actually, I'll reach out to my brother-in-law because they just did that on their estate here. So I'll just ask him on who.
Yeah, see who he used. Yeah, if he has good recommendations, then pass that along.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome. Valerie.
Hi, Rick.
Hello.
My question is about, I have referred someone to out-of-state Vermont and they bought and closed, but then they said that they wanted to potentially buy again. So I sent a letter out to, or an email out to that same agent. And, saying that I would I got 30% the first time. So I thought, well, since they're buying again, I'll do 25%. So, but I didn't get any kind of response at all, which makes me think, aren't the clients supposed to come back to me? Or is the agent thinking that that's now their client? If they buy second and third?
Yeah. So the answer is kind of, it depends. And what it depends on, see, I wasn't lying when I said almost every answer is it depends. What it depends on is kind of what you may have set up in the initial referral, right? Some referrals are for a certain period of time, where however many properties someone purchases in the next 2 years, I'm due a certain referral fee. Some referrals are kind of one and done. And then if the client kind of comes back to you and says, hey, you know what, can you re-refer me to what's their face? Which, by the way, never happens, because that's how we think. That's not how the client thinks, right? If the client now used the agent you referred them to, it's likely that agent just made the phone call to that agent to say, hey, are they buying like an investment property now? Is that what they're doing? A secondary property?
Yes, and they're relatives, so I told them they should really come back to me so I can do another referral.
Sure. Yeah. And so what I would do is I would send do out a referral form and send the referral form to the agent. Once you've sent it, then just pick up the phone and call, right? To say, hey, you know what, I just found out that, Tom and Maria are looking to buy another property, and, I'm so grateful if you would help them all over again. And, because you just were successful on that first one, I'd love to just work something out and have a lower arrangement for a referral fee on them. Here's what's real. There's no overarching rule or law that will that we can point to that says this agent has to do it this way, right? Really, in a scenario like that, it's kind of up to the agent to decide what they think the right thing to do is. It's clear what I think the right thing to do is, right? My answer to any of those kinds of referral questions are, without Valerie, would I have made any money on these people? Right? And if the answer is no, then I think a referral fee is due. And especially if it's kind of right after they purchased their first property. But again, not everybody thinks that way, and there isn't an overarching rule or law that will cover that for you. So you have to just be on purpose about the conversation and getting agreement with it. But I would send the referral fee with a lower number in it, and then as soon as you know that they've received it, that next day give a call. And again, don't make it a big to-do. I would just be happy and smiley to say, hey, this is what I heard. I sent you the thing yesterday. I just wanted to follow up, see if there were any questions. Is there any way I can help? If you notice, I reduced the fee from 30 to 20 or whatever the numbers are.
Right.
That help?
Yes. Thank you.
You're welcome. What else? Our remaining 5 minutes. Anybody got anything? Well, we covered a broad spectrum today. My goodness. From expansion to referrals. I love it.
Rick.
Yes, Donna.
You're an attorney? I heard you say that earlier.
No, I just play one on TV.
For real?
I am not an attorney. I sometimes maybe pretend to be one, but I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm not an actual licensed attorney.
Yeah, you said that's the attorney in me. So I thought, oh, he's an attorney too. All right, well. Oh,
Nope.
well.
No. I am not an actual licensed attorney. Like I said, I sometimes think I am one, but I'm not.
Okay.
So if there's any real attorneys on the call, I know Ariana is still on. She knows the how to dot the i's and cross the t's. I do my best attorney broker slash giving opinions as if I was an attorney to help get the job done. But I'm not an attorney, and so whenever I say, push people towards their attorneys, I really mean like real attorneys. Because there is a difference, right? There is a difference. I may know a lot of things about how the laws inside of our industry affect each of you, but I'm not a practicing attorney. And trust me, there are a lot of times where someone will ask me a question and I'll say, you know what, I will get back to you. And I call Ariane and say, you know what, can you walk me through, let's put both of our brains on this, because Ariane knows again, how to dot the i's and cross the t's from a legal perspective. I'm really more of the here's my version of that. This is how I interpret those things and how to turn that into best practices for you guys. Anything else?
I have a quick question.
Yes.
I get a lot of emails, like, I'm just curious if anyone uses it or if you're familiar, like KW virtual support cyberbacker, and then they show these, is that something that people in our office are using, or is that something new? Yeah.
Yes, Cyberbacker is actually a great company. The market centers use Cyberbackers as well. We use them as support for your team leaders. And so if you're looking for virtual support, Cyberbacker is not a bad company to call and get
It was like a
some info.
legit thing, because sometimes
They're not the only company,
right.
but a lot of people, again, we're using them. We have 2 Cyberbackers on our payroll, and a lot of your colleagues use them as well.
Okay.
All right, Valerie, it looks like the last question is going to you.
Oh gosh, thanks. All right, 2 quick ones. One, the Debbie Orr Business Builders, is that something you can just jump into anytime and then back out? It's not a sign up. Okay.
Absolutely, yeah. So she'd be happy to have anybody who hasn't participated in that jump on at 9:30 tomorrow morning. Check it out. You can kind of sit in the background and see what goes on if you don't want to jump full with both feet in, and kind of just be a voyeur for a little bit, and then decide it's for you or not, and come back or don't, whatever works.
But people do that a lot. They go in and they kind of stay. And is that true too? Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yep.
Okay. And then the last one is desk fees. I think that changed during COVID. What are they now? Say in Newtown.
Yes, so they're the same as they were. I don't want to quote numbers because I'm not 100% sure I know the numbers. So do reach out to your MCAs, to either Deb Linke or Lisa Katz, and they can kind of walk you through what those numbers are depending on what you might be interested in and the location. So ask them what those numbers are. It's a better plan, because I don't know 100%. I don't want to say something that I'm wrong about.
Okay, thank you.
Rick, could I just ask you about that expired thing again, maybe off, like, I don't know if anyone wants to hear my whole thing.
Yeah, well, so it's 1:59. So we can just, any other questions you have on it, you can let's just hang on. And if anyone else wants to hang on. So guys, we're gonna say goodbye. Ryan's gonna ask a follow-up to that expired question. So if you want to hear the answer to that, hang out. If not, we will see you later or tomorrow at 9.
Thanks, Rick.
Sure thing. Yes, Ronnie.
And no, it was, I think it was saying was the broker, it was Chip Newman. So is he the broker of Newman's, or?
He's not. Russ is the broker.
Okay. So you're saying, like, what I'm saying is it's kind of like, I understood, obviously, in some ways, if it wasn't even gonna even progress to there was no need to talk about it. But my point is now I did show it, and I just feel like I want to get something, I want to get something, like I said, in writing, but I forgot what he kind of made it seem to me that he would re-sign a listing agreement before presenting an offer. But as we both agree, that's a little too late. I don't need to have a hassle or a problem at the point that someone's going to make an offer. So would you
Well,
just?
so here's the question. Is the
Yeah.
buyer making an offer?
I don't know yet.
Yeah, so then I wouldn't worry about it until
Yeah, you
the
think, you
buyers-
see, because I almost feel like if they're ready to make an offer, so you think that's okay? I feel like if they're ready to make an offer, at that point, then they might say, oh, well, it's only going to be this percent or that percent, or they might try to change what, I don't know.
Well,
Alright.
they might, but again, you've already showed the property, so
Okay,
the horse is
okay.
out of the barn, right?
All right.
It's
So you think that's fine, that it would be that if they make an offer, I let him know, and then he re-signs a listing agreement, however he presented it to me, that you think that sounds good?
yeah. Well, I think based on where we are today, where the showings already happened without an agreement of compensation, yes, I think that
Okay.
that I wouldn't
Okay.
waste my time until I knew that the buyers were going to make an offer. And then
Okay.
once I knew, I would give a call to say, hey, they're going to make an offer. Let's either
right, I'll
put it
know
back
that
on the
later.
market so it's on the MLS, and now we have that agreement, or I can have my brokerage send over an agreement of compensation, which works for you. Here's the other thing I'll tell you.